Hello, welcome to the second edition of Auto Insider, a podcast from Automobility Limited. I'm Bill Russo. I'm the founder and CEO of Automobility, a strategy and investment advisory firm based in Shanghai. And since 2017, we've been helping companies navigate the disruptive shifts transforming the mobility landscape, spanning electrification, connectivity, autonomy, and new business models. And with China at the epicenter of these strategies, we're in a unique position to bring you the insights from the front lines of innovation. Auto Insider is a platform for conversations with the people shaping the future of mobility, especially in the markets where transformative technologies are being scaled at high speed. Today on Auto Insider, we're joined by Dr. Xiaozhi Liu, founder and CEO of ASL Automotive. Dr. Liu is a globally respected leader in automotive innovation with a career spanning executive roles at General Motors, Fuyao Glass, and beyond. She's also an independent board member at Autoliv and Johnson Matthey, and was recently named the inaugural ambassador for China for FISITA, which is the leading international auto engineering society. With deep expertise across 3 continents and a passion for technology-driven transformation, Dr. Liu brings a unique perspective on the future of mobility. And in this episode, we explore the phenomenon of what we're calling the butterfly effect, which is reshaping the global automotive landscape. It's a transformation where small and early shifts in technology, policy, and consumer behavior have triggered sweeping changes across markets worldwide. And much like a caterpillar undergoing metamorphosis, the industry is emerging from its traditional form into something lighter, into something smarter, and more connected. And Dr. Liu joins us to unpack how this evolution from internal combustion engine to intelligent electrification is redefining global competition, supply chains, and the very nature of mobility itself. Dr. Liu, welcome to Auto Insider. It's a pleasure to have you here on our podcast. And we're going to start by just having you tell us a little bit about your journey in the automotive industry.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Bill, for inviting me to participate in today's podcast. First of all, let me briefly introduce my career journey. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first batch of students going abroad for study in the earlier days of China reform and the opening up. After obtaining my master's and PhD degree in engineering in Germany, I joined General Motors, and during my nearly 20 years of the work at the GM, I served as sales and marketing director, chief engineer, and CTO of Greater China region, director for vehicle concept and electronics control software integration of General Motors North America, CEO of General Motors Taiwan. Afterwards, I joined Fuyao Glass as global CEO and served as an independent director on the global board for international companies, including Fuyao Glass, Autoliv, Johnson Matthey, and AB InBev. My current focus is to assist Chinese private entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, and executive teams in areas such as cooperative strategy planning, cost management, internationalization, etc. In the past 20 years, I've participated in and am currently coaching over 60 companies.
Wow, impressive. 60 companies. I don't know where you find the time on top of all the other things. So ASL Automotive, can you describe a little bit about your platform?
So we actually support those companies through a group. It's called a private boardroom or one-on-one coach on the side of the cooperations, which makes me fairly busy. But we have been doing this for over almost 20 years. Has also helped a lot of companies since then for a decade and still with them. And these companies are mostly fairly successful companies in China, and all are private enterprises.
Great. So you've had the opportunity to work inside the industry, closely working with some major corporations, and now you're applying your experience to help and coach leaders of corporations who are competing now in quite a different, I think we both share having been in this industry for a long time and watch it go through a lot of transitions. And nowhere is that more evident than here in China. So with your extensive experience in both domestic and international markets, how do you view the auto industry over the recent decades, especially with the rise of what we're calling intelligent connected vehicles?
Looking back at the development of automobiles over the past 30 years, it is like a process of a caterpillar to a butterfly, as we talked many times. An era of caterpillar, cars with a mechanic DNA that can solve human transportation's needs from point A to point B. However, they also have high emissions, easy to cause congestions, and traffic accidents, and with very low levels of intelligence. With the transformation of electric and intelligence vehicles, cars have becoming mobile intelligence devices and spaces defined by mostly software. The importance of chips, computing power, and the data has become increasingly high. The development of intelligent vehicle can reduce carbon emission, elevate environmental pollution, optimize energy structure, reduce dependence on crude oil, and reduce stop and go phenomena by 50% through autonomous driving assistance system and safety systems. It can also reduce 95% of human operational error and save a large number of lives. The previous Caterpillar car has now gradually evolved into a fully integrated, shareable, and flexible designated platform architecture. In other words, the butterfly platform.
Right. And the thing about the caterpillar has the same DNA as the butterfly, but it takes on quite a different form and has a quite different set of capabilities. And that's, I think, the most fascinating thing about the transitions that we're seeing in this industry. It isn't just the physicality that's changing. It's also the business model all the way through the value chain, from the technologies at the component level, system level, vehicle level, and in the way in which people interact with the intelligent connected vehicles in their post-factory life. And I think that's the fascinating thing to watch as we witness the new types of companies, the internet and communication technology companies. We had Jack Cheng on this podcast last time, and he talked about the influence that the ICTs have on the product configuration and on the supply chain. So let's talk a little bit about the supply chain, an area that you're advising many companies in your portfolio and you've been involved directly in your career. How will the transformation that we're describing here, how will that affect the automotive industry supply chain?
You're fully right. As a result of transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, the core parts of automobile have changed, from engines and gearbox to batteries, motors, electronic controls, chips, etc. And also, we call it AI, the artificial intelligence. Chinese automobile industry is tasting the sweetness of electrifications in terms of increasing ownership, which has gradually expanded the core technology of the automotive supply chain from Europe, from US and Japan to China, and also Asia Pacific region. In fact, apart from some high-end chips, the entire automotive industry chain has already been established in China. In addition, cooperations, openness, and win-win outcomes are another trend. Today, all the automotive OEMs tend to self-developing core components, including chips and intelligent driving system, which is also changing the role of the tier one from previous simple supply to deep bonded with OEM. Supply chain with core technologies will participate more in the joint development with OEMs, and enterprises without technological competitiveness will be gradually eliminated.
Wow. Yeah. And I think the things that I'm observing, both of us were spending time at the auto show at the end of last month here in Shanghai, and it was very evident that there seem to be certain technology vectors that are becoming critical to this industry going forward, and the ability to not just vertically integrate. In some cases, it is necessary to have clear control, say in batteries and electronics, which are increasing in the overall bill of materials content, both cost as well as technological sophistication. But you mentioned autonomous driving. If you are going to be differentiated in this industry, you need to have a ability to have a value proposition that's rooted in your ability to integrate these core technologies. But we all tend to, I think the world tends to know little about the Chinese butterfly, but they are familiar with a company named Tesla. And Tesla's had an impact, a significant one, on the development of the automotive industry in China, globally and in China. And since Tesla arrived and signed its agreement to build its gigafactory here in Shanghai in 2019, and they launched the Model 3 in 2020, there's been a significant progress in the EV sector. What do you think has driven that success in China in the electric vehicle category?
The success of the EV industry in China depends on many factors in addition to a strong government support. One of the major factors is the driving factor of China incremental market. 20 years ago, as you know, the number of vehicles per thousand people in China was about 50, while in the United States it exceeded 700. It is much easier to develop a new industry in an incremental market than a mature market like the United States. Secondly, there is ample market competition. In the earlier stage of new energy vehicle industry, allowing Tesla to enter China and build factories was initially controversial, but later on, it proving to be the right decision. Tesla's entry allowed the market tuning continue to be competed, and the entry of Tesla and the EV startups provided a strong benchmark for traditional Chinese car companies. Companies without competitive advantages continually to disappear. Government support can enable an industry to take off while market competition can truly accelerate its development.
What's interesting about the development here is Tesla may have, as you say, created the awareness of the consumer of the category and created, I think, a lot more demand interest. But convincing the consumers to make the switch requires a much more, I think, a systemic set of factors that de-risk the way that consumers think about the use case and the ownership model of an electrified vehicle. And I think, as you point out, the influence of policy, of investment in infrastructure, a lot of work went into that. Can you maybe take us a little bit back in time to before Tesla's arrival? What were some of the fundamental foundation elements that made it possible for China to create this exponential rise of electric vehicles?
The development of automotive products from a caterpillar 30 years ago to almost a butterfly today is a change in technological direction with a significant advancement in core components such as batteries, motors, electronic control chips, and electronic architecture. Compared to 30 years ago, today's intelligent electric vehicles are completely innovative products. However, a homogeneous competition has become the biggest challenge in the electrical vehicle industry, with most companies' car products tending to a similar. It's like they look almost like the same. The continuous growth of the market has given rise to a large number of enterprises without core technologies. As the incremental market gradually becomes a mature market, there is intense competition, including continuous price wars, and how competitive enterprises are constantly eliminated. This is the process of market transformation, and only enterprises that continuously innovate processes, differentiate technologies, and have competitive cost can finally survive.
Yeah, what's mind-boggling is how quickly consumer behaviors can shift when the ingredients are put together. And that's the part that I think the rest of the world hasn't experienced yet, that this incremental evolution that we've witnessed in this industry for the past century to today, what we're now seeing are far more innovative products, not just in terms of how we power the wheel, right? The electric vehicle is not just a question of how the powertrain system works, but also how the consumers in a product that has far more electronic features on the inside as you say, on the outside, they all look pretty similar to cars that we've been familiar with for a long time, and it's becoming harder to differentiate the car purely on an appearance standpoint or from a hardware point of view. But the in-cabin experience is really what creates a whole different paradigm of how a person interacts with a vehicle that happens to be more of a computer, as you say, a butterfly, but a digital experience, a interactive machine, an AI powered machine, a software defined vehicle, all the words that I think are being used to describe it. We're seeing the evolution of that happen very rapidly in a market like China. When we move past incremental to more innovative products, how does that affect global competition and collaboration models?
Well, you can see this time, we just had the Shanghai Auto Show. And if you
Mm-hmm.
go see the auto show, it recalled me my first participation in Beijing Auto Show in 1995. That was exactly 30 years ago. At that time, when foreign brands were absolute protagonists, domestic and foreign OEMs engage in the negotiations to seek more opportunities for joint ventures and cooperation to enhance their own technological level and production capacity. I was actually working from then in China, witness this whole development. At that time, cars were purely mechanic products, as we say at Caterpillar. And any car at that time with one engine and four wheels could be sold easily. So this year, Shanghai Auto Show is totally different compared to 30 years ago. Firstly, domestic brands have replaced the foreign brands as the main players in the auto show. And the Chinese companies are clearly moving faster. Mainstream foreign brands having gradually developed from misunderstanding to awakening. And we see it in this auto show, and then learning how to catch up. And the current stage of accelerating catch up stage is getting faster and faster. In order to catch up with the Chinese enterprises, foreign brands have also gradually transferred their R&D to China, which is different before many years. At this Shanghai Auto Show, Volkswagen, Audi, and Toyota all brought new locally developed products. Lexus is building a new factory in Shanghai. Hala is building an R&D center in China, and so on. Many other multinationals have already established an R&D center in China since last decades. This year, Shanghai Auto Show has returned to rationality, with safety becoming the focus of attention for major car companies. At the same time, people pursuit of beauty and art reflected in the current intelligent electric vehicle products, and the relationship between cars and society is undergoing changes, which is very obvious.
It was very clear that the emphasis on tech enablement, that your brand is defined by its technological capabilities, far more than what we have seen in the past. Before it was, did we create a uniquely styled vehicle? Did it have driving characteristics that differentiated from others in its class? Or is it a value for the money proposition? Types of companies that we're seeing emerge in this intelligent connected vehicle era are, I'd say, defined by the technology vectors that they are able to conquer. If you're BYD and if you conquered the battery supply chain, then you have a pricing advantage because of your ability to scale EV batteries. If you're a Xiaomi, you're a smart device company and you have a core electronics capability, and your ability to differentiate the user experience based on your operating system becomes a key point of differentiation. If you're an XPeng or a Li or a Huawei, which is both a supplier and an OEM product configurator working through multiple companies, you're differentiated in your ability to integrate those technologies. And ADAS and autonomous driving become your points of differentiation. It isn't just the hardware world that we once were. In the world of the Caterpillar, it was about the way the machine worked. It was about the mechanical engineering characteristics. In the world of the butterfly, it's much more of a technology era. Would you agree?
Yes, it is fully right. With the expansion, with the development of all global auto market, we need to understand also were the needs of customer. Firstly, the needs of customer are different in different regions. For example, as you mentioned, all those brands, they could be successful in one places, but in other places could be different. For example, in the United States, vehicle are transportation tools from part A to part B. In China, vehicles are intelligent mobile devices. Sometimes people call it secondary living room. In Europe, emphasis is placed on the driving culture in the automotive industry, which is in their life culture. And in Japan, cost competitiveness is ahead of all other factors. Moreover, the acceptance of new products, technology, and brands varies among sellers in different countries. In this regard, Chinese consumers have a relatively high acceptance of new things like gadgets and so on, while markets such as in Japan and South Korea are completely opposite. Consumers hope to purchase domestic car brands, and OEM have a relatively low acceptance of foreign component suppliers. When expanding globally, companies should take this into considerations, especially those brands you just mentioned are very successful in China, and they have to really go after what the customer really likes. Secondly, it is also important to learn from experiences of failure, such as why many international brands withdraw from China. This question has been asked many times. For example, Suzuki withdraw from China because they did not allow local customer, and the small-sized models did not meet the presence of Chinese consumers. FCA, which you know very well, withdraw from China 2020 due to the product's quality issues. As you know, the Chinese are very sensitive and the regulations are very stringent in that particular area, which has seriously damaged the brand reputation because it goes very fast. Additionally, the company's rapid development has resulted in a service system that cannot keep up with expansion speed. Learning from the lessons from these failed business, I can name many other examples, but a company can then prevent making the same mistakes, which is very crucial.
So when companies who are native to a market, they have sort of an innate ability to understand consumer behavior and make adaptations that are necessary for appealing to those consumer behaviors. And one of the things I find fascinating about the last 20 years or 21 years that I've been in China is that the industry that I arrived in was in that caterpillar state, and it has transformed in the last 5 years into this butterfly. And consumer expectations of what a car does and how it fits into the lifestyle have evolved in ways that foreign brands have not been able to match because they're still thinking of the world of the caterpillar. And that involves understanding these consumer behaviors, the adaptations needed, which in China today requires more attention to digital connectivity, intelligent connectivity, relevancy of the software and technology capabilities of the intelligent connected vehicle, I think is critical to success in today's world, presenting significant hurdles to the foreign companies doing business in China. So I guess the question I would ask you is, what hurdles and opportunities do foreign automakers face in bringing technology relevancy to the China market?
Recall 30 years ago when we started at General Motors and we brought Buick to China at that year, 1997, the new launched vehicle. But in order to make that car to be successful, as you know, it was very successful. And we did over small and big, a little bit like 1,000 different changes, both on follow up the actually regulatory and mostly to follow up the customer needs. So that has been very successful. So at today's age, firstly, we came to a completely different, like after 30 years, foreign car makers must weigh the importance between their existing traditional ICE vehicle business and the new electric roads, which determines the allocation of enterprises' resources. You can't just stay always on the same technology. This factor prevents these international OEMs from having the same all-in mentality as Chinese car makers, which to some extent hinder their development in the area of intelligent electric vehicle. As I just mentioned, GM did very successful at the beginning, from then. Now they have to really follow what's going on with all needs. The core reason at this time for the decline in the sales of foreign brands in recent years is the lack of product innovation and the failure to keep up with the changes in the consumer demands. However, I believe the good thing is that they have realized this problem now, and the many joint ventures in China have handed over the leadership of technology development to their Chinese partners. This is very critical. Taking SAIC Volkswagen as an example, in the past, the development of new technologies was led by Volkswagen Germany, which could no longer keep up with the development of intelligent electrical vehicles. In 2024, Volkswagen Germany has handed over the development of technology to SAIC, let go of its pride, rationally recognize the current situation, and do things that are beneficial to the company's own development. Changing is sometimes that the mainstream international car brands need to do now. Change. Abandoning the conservative mentality of regional development, increasingly investment in new technology, and embracing change and transformation are necessary to keep up with the development of the new automotive era. Speed is another important factor, and if they can keep up with the speed of Chinese enterprises, they are likely to be eliminated gradually. So change and speed are very critical, as you ask in this question, how foreign brands could make up with.
Yeah, and the pace of innovation in a technology defined in a product configuration heavily weighted toward these new technology fields, AI, autonomous driving, battery technology, in-vehicle HMI, that will evolve at a clock speed far faster than what we've seen in the traditional hardware-centric business model. You don't replace powertrain configurations you can measure in 5 to 7 year cycles when ICE engine upgrades would happen, and they would happen rather incrementally in general. But when you're dealing with, pixels, when you're dealing with software, when you're dealing with technologies that do become obsolete within a shorter time schedule, then you have to rethink your whole lifecycle management. Technology and innovation and how to manage the product lifecycle or the technology lifecycle really has to be thought of differently, don't you think, by the global automakers?
Absolutely. As we say, new technology may create differentiated advantage of enterprises if they can do it with speed. In the future, the application of AI will not only be in cars, but also in the development and the manufacturing of new products. Every enterprise will have its own artificial intelligence platform, which is limited to internal use of collecting and sharing best practice, collecting and analysis user usage data, and so on. Autonomous drive has achieved a transformation from a rule-based to end-to-end, and rule-based approaches are difficult to cope up with the complex and changing road environments. The end-to-end autonomous driving system enable the machine to learn the behavior models of human drivers from driving data and general driving control decisions that are more in line with the actual sense, which can simplify the system architecture, reduce the amount of codes, and improve the overall efficiency of the system. The current development of directions of automotive power batteries are, firstly, as you see, I'm here in the US also see a lot of development in solid state batteries, which have higher energy density, safety, and longer lifespan compared to mainstream liquid batteries. The second is sodium batteries, which have the advantage of abundant raw materials reserves, low manufacturing costs, and good thermal stability. As you know, CATL sodium battery technology was released on April 1st and expected to be put into mass production and used in June this year. I'm very looking forward to see this. And third is battery supercharging technology. CATL and BYD, as you mentioned before, have both released supercharging technology this year. They do not stop. They just keep developing, which could realize a 5 minutes charging range of 440 to 520 kilometers. So technological innovation is the primary product's force, the core force. Only by relying on innovative technology and the products can enterprises go faster and further and long survival.
I think that the strongest argument, because I know a lot of multinationals are struggling with how do I justify the investments to upgrade my technological capabilities to keep pace with the innovation cycles that we see emanating from the China market. This is the world's biggest market by far. 1/3 of all the cars made in the world are made in China. And more than 70% of the world's EV batteries are made in China. For that reason, more than 70% of the electrified vehicles are made in China. Foreign companies are kind of at a loss for being able to justify trying to stay in a race where they're clearly behind and have lost significant market share. I think passenger vehicle market share has moved from 64% of the China passenger vehicle market to now about 32%. So half of the passenger vehicle market share is gone. It's tough for the boards of multinational companies who have a fiduciary responsibility to make money to justify continuing to invest in a market where they're consistently falling behind. And because of the factors that you've described, will fall further behind because they can't keep pace with the cycles of innovation that we see happening in this butterfly era. So here's the question, and you're on the board of corporations. What's the argument and the case for continuing to invest, for continuing to stay in this new game?
We have based the Chinese proverb, maybe also Western the same. It's a 10-year West, a 10-year East. As we saw the old development in the last 30 years, how fast China automotive market has been developed, it will not stop. That's why the new energy vehicle, like electric vehicle you mentioned, are in an unstoppable trend. The main obstacle, as you mentioned also, to the globalization of electric vehicle includes also for the all international brands. They have also advantages for this. Firstly, the local protectionism and high tariffs imposed, you say, from European and US on Chinese electric vehicles, even those vehicles are successfully developed in China. And then it is different now if you want to go outside of China. Simultaneously, the foreign brands, how they can catch up. Let's say another important factor, secondarily, safety and vehicle life cycle issues. The recent years, frequent safety accidents involving electric vehicles, and that also mostly on batteries, have raised concern about the safety of electric vehicle in society. That also called attention to all car makers, including foreign brands. Thirdly, the construction of infrastructure varies gradually globally. Some places have not been ready for electric vehicle. The construction of charging facilities in many other areas is seriously inadequate. So in that case, electric vehicles are not sustainable. Fourthly, consumer awareness and acceptance. In some regions, consumers have long been accused of using traditional fuel vehicles because they are customized, right? They do not want to have range anxiety, and their awareness and acceptance of new technology and products are relatively low. I have dialogue with friends in Europe and US. They're really concerned have a car is I want to have a car from point to point B without any concern. It will go with a tank of gas. So that added more difficulties. And of course, this also, as you mentioned, that for global OEM, they still have some room, but they cannot wait anymore. They still can use their industrial combustion engine vehicle for a while because of that fact. Becoming a butterfly from a caterpillar is not easy, as we say. You could be a butterfly in this country, maybe still a moth in other places, right? The goal is clear. That only by overcoming numerous difficulties and obstacles towards the goal can one break free from the cocoon and becoming a butterfly. This is a process, and this is not a very easy, and there is no shortcut.
And I've always said that the strongest argument to staying in the game is that game is going to come to you, whether you like it or not. Protectionism is not going to make for prosperity of your domestic industry. This is a global industry. Regionalization is counterproductive to the economic direction of a consumer market where more and more consumers want technology at an affordable price point. So the breaking of the economies of scale of the global supply chain, which will be the cost of regionalization, is going to make things more difficult to scale and will make things more expensive to buy. So I think we need to kind of figure out, how do we build collaborations again? How do we figure out how to reknit the fabric together of the global auto industry? Because it evolved this way for economic reasons, for the benefit of the whole industry. We kind of forget that for the longest time, this market, China, has been the growth engine of the world's auto industry and can still be that for the transition to electric vehicles. And yes, you still need to live in both worlds. The caterpillar will coexist with the butterfly, but you have to be able to compete in both if you're going to be a sustainable business. So if I were to kind of capsulize that and look ahead, what strategic moves are necessary for companies to secure global success? And how important will partnerships and alliances be in building that?
Yeah. As we had experienced, you and me, and last over 30 years in China, we saw one side of development, how the foreign brands can be successful in China. So now we see the next 30 years, any successful brands, if they are successful in electrical system, like electrical vehicle or new energy vehicle in China, and before they enter into outside of China market, strive to do the best in the domestic markets and bring the best practice from China to overseas. This is the key. This had happened the last 30 years when the foreign brands brought their best practice to China and make them successful. For example, in an initial age, transport the equipment that has been well run in China to overseas and send the trained employee and the people to overseas. They can make the equipment operate as quickly as possible. The existing international automotive brands, including Tier 1, have valuable experiences in globalization that can help many companies that are just starting to expand globally, taking a few steps. For example, I've been in, as you mentioned, independent director at Autoliv, a global Tier 1 component company. For many years, Autoliv relies on productions based in 25 countries around the globe to accompany OEMs throughout the process of going global, providing compliance, operational support, and experiences sharing with localized practices, faced with the cultural difference and organizational challenges. The upstream and downstream of the joint industry chain from ecological synergy to provide differentiated value for OEMs. As we say, customers are first. That's how the company is doing. For enterprises, win-win or multi-win cooperation is definitely one of the most important factors for achieving international success. Collaborations with multinational enterprises rely on their global resources and localization experiences. Building sustainable global competitiveness can quickly help enterprises integrate into local market, reduce risks, lower costs, sharing resources, and so on, so forth.
It's almost, you're describing flipping the script. How did China get where it is? It did it with partnerships, collaborations that accelerated the development here with a clear picture of where it wanted to go beyond just copying, right? China has long been accused of reverse engineering and copying foreign, but you can't say that about the current development because they've actually gone to a completely different place. It was the industry globally was staying a caterpillar, whereas China became this butterfly. Now we need to benchmark the butterfly and partner with certain aspects of it because it has the ability to scale these technologies, and we need to bring that innovation back to the rest of the world. And the Chinese companies probably could be partners in helping you do that if you're open open-minded enough to allow the possibility. And I think there is the willingness there on some companies. You mentioned a few of what Volkswagen is trying to do, and others are now recognizing that they need to catch up. They need to catch up with this thought process around what the future of mobility is going to be about and the critical technologies needed to compete in that future. If you were to think over the next decade and the pivotal factors that will redefine the success of the global auto industry, what would those be, and what groundbreaking innovations do you foresee?
As I mentioned also before, in the last 30 years, one I recall, because we've been with all the process, we understand we call the parallel development with customers. But now parallel development is not good enough anymore. The caterpillar and the butterfly are different. All the OEM and supply chain kind of like make the birth of any new cars are actually together. If I would say physically and the mind, soul and embody, if you would. Of course, it becoming also more challenge in the context of geopolitical instability. How you can quickly achieve this, and particularly in the global, and how can you do a layout and production while controlling the cost and then reduce the risks? That will be the key to the success of enterprises. That's, as you mentioned before, there is no such like, have you took my technology 30 years ago? It's completely new because the baby of vehicle is born together. So with a large scale application of AI, the importance of data will further increase. You mentioned that in many of your talks, the DNA of the current vehicle are data. How to collect, analyze, protect, and utilize those data to establish a data loop of enterprises will becoming a key factor for the success of next decades. Cross-border cooperation, of course, will becoming even more important, and Huawei has become a successful case. Enterprises will continue to cooperate in different dimensions, such as technology, in different areas, users, supply chain, and ecological areas. In April, the joint venture cooperations in China automotive supply chain industry has reached a new peak with over 20 cooperations projects landed, which is a fast speed and a peak. I think the breakthrough, as you asked, the innovation in the next decade will be in the following areas. Not they cover all, but some of most important one. First, energy technology roadmap, solid state batteries, fuel cell, etc. And second, autonomous driving, L4 level autonomous driving will be achieved, which assist the safety of both driver and outside of car, all the people around it. Third, innovation in human computer interactions. AI will help achieve fully natural interactions of voice, gestures, and eyes control, vehicle recognition of passengers controls, enough bill sensor, and so on and so forth. So that I can talk more about that. But those are the areas for the new energy vehicle, electrical vehicle will need all those things. And different region differently, but they are based on really core data as DNA.
Yeah, absolutely critical to understand that. And you said, and I totally agree that all of this needs to be adapted to the local context, as was always the case here with foreign brands who were always most successful, including General Motors and Volkswagen. Throughout their early part of the journey, were the ones who made the adaptations necessary to make the products relevant in China. But as we moved from caterpillar stage to butterfly, where data and intelligent connectivity became relevant, that's where they fell down because they didn't have the in-house capabilities to be able to do that. As rapidly as some of these newer Chinese companies that have come on the scene with less baggage of history, more degrees of freedom of how they thought about the future product configuration, and far more access to the digital economy at scale, which gives China a huge leg up on the development of the advanced technology domains that we've talked about. So in conclusion, reaching the end of our time, and it's been a great conversation, what advice would you offer to automotive companies aiming to compete in this 21st century auto industry? And the second part of that question, where should their focus lie to succeed as to survive and succeed as global companies?
I think these are very critical questions. And firstly, no matter which country you go, any companies must adhere to a long-term perspective. The second is to persist in producing good products with a cost competitiveness. The third is to adapt to local conditions. The same product cannot be applicable in all countries and must be customer-centric. Hyundai Motor is a good example. Adhered to a long-termism. Hyundai started using a 10-year million-kilometer warranty in the 1990s and have been adhering to it for over 20 years. Persisted in producing high-quality products, Hyundai has consistently ranked first in J.D. Power in vehicle reliability reach for many years. This is a very good example. Tailored to local conditions, developing different products for different markets, including US, China, and Europe. I think this one example will tell all.
Well, this brings us to the end of this edition of Auto Insider. A big thank you to Dr. Xiaozhi Liu for sharing her invaluable insights on the evolving global mobility landscape and the butterfly effect of China's transformation. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and gained a deeper understanding of the forces shaping the automotive world. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast to get notified of future episodes and to help others discover Auto Insider. Until next time, I'm Bill Russo, and thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Bill. Look for the next time. Thank you.